Are we on, Jerry? Good morning. I'm going to open up the BAB meeting. We have a number of things to discuss. What we want to do first, though, is Pledge of Allegiance. So, Tom, how about Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Renee, hi. Well, welcome. Well, we're going to go through this thing rather swiftly. You can call roll.
Okay. Committee Member Ulrich.
Present.
Committee Member Murphy. Present. Committee Member Farmer.
Here.
Chair Daddy.
Here.
Dale Hansen, Secretary, here.
Thank you. Item 1. Having read the minutes, does anybody?
There's a communications card in front of you.
We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do the minutes first, and then we're gonna.
Okay.
Did you want to complain about the?
Following the agenda.
Right. No. We're gonna approve the minutes first. Does anybody have anything that they would like to discuss on the minute? If not, I would like somebody to make a motion, and let's approve the minutes.
I move that minutes be approved from November 18th.
I second. Would you call roll?
Okay. Member Ulrich.
Yes.
Member Murphy.
Yes.
Member Farmer.
Yes.
Chair Daddy.
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Yes. Now, we have public comments. Mr. Wyrick, Council Member Wyrick.
Very quickly.
Liaison to the BAB Committee.
Yes, and I just want to state for the record that I'm really happy that you guys have gotten things arranged to have a meeting. You, as far as I'm concerned, have a real backlog of work. I hope you can have another meeting in March. That was certainly what was discussed at our pre-meeting, our organizational meeting. I hope you continue to have monthly meetings until you're caught up. There is a lot to do. And so that's just, I wanted to express my personal opinion on that matter. Thank you.
Thank you. And I concur with that. We are so far behind and have so many things to do. Item 2, if you've read item 2,
Closing
Chair.
the
Just a moment, before,
Yes.
I'd like to not only also concur with that notion, but I would, at this point, I don't know if it's appropriate for if it requires a resolution in that regard, but I believe that the, given the workload relative to the building code alone, the Building Appeals Board, I would submit, needs to meet on a monthly basis and also at a time that is in the evening, at a time that is convenient to the 3 members of the board who, at least meaning no disrespect to any of the members who are not, do not have work requirements or commitments, but I know at least 3 of us do. So at this point, notwithstanding this 10 a.m. meeting on a Tuesday morning, I'm glad that we can all show up. However, I would not like to make our monthly meeting at this time, irregardless of which day. So do we need to have a resolution on that, or do we have a concurrence, or what?
No, I would concur, but in another couple hours, we're going to have a different chair, and that's going to be at the pleasure of the new chair.
Okay. Swell.
So I don't want to make a last-minute lame duck, This is going to be, and I would also say that a 3-week cycle might be better, but then again, that's going to be to the new chair, a 3-week cycle. In a 3-week cycle, so we're not going a 3-month cycle, and we start, you got to get the oil out, and you got to get the machine going again, you got to figure out how we're doing this. It's too hard to get inertia. So I would almost think that a 3-week cycle would be better. We're going to move to item 2.
I'm going to close the public communication.
Yeah. close public communication and move to item 2. Do I have any members of the board that would like to weigh in on item 2? Staff needs
Sorry,
to
I'm
be
a little new
admonished.
about this.
Staff needs to be admonished that they need to weigh in, raise their hand, turn on their mic, speak up, interrupt, interject as things come up.
Okay,
Please, you are an active participant, and you need to be an active participant. Okay?
thank
So
you for your
please.
training. I am new at this. Renee Mario, building official. The item 2 that you have in front of you, I met with the fire chief and asked them to pare down the amendments that they were requesting on the previous meetings to the items that affect the city of Ojai and that are building standards. With working with them, we came up with the spreadsheet that you see in your packet of the changes to Chapter 9 only that are building standards that directly affect the constituents of the city of Ojai. I know previously in the last meeting, the recommendation from the BAB was to not move forward with the changes, recommending them to council, but we felt that maybe if this was a little clearer, you might have a little better understanding of what they were proposing. So we pared them down. I think these are the ones that fiscally impact the citizens of this city directly. So I am asking if you would take a look at them and then make a recommendation to council whether we would adopt these changes or not.
And Renee, having read the minutes, you can see that I made 4 or 5 attempts to ask the fire marshal to discuss, and the answer still was, we're not here to speak about that, we're just here to speak about this, and I didn't get a single answer to a single question. So if the board feels, and the board knows what it wants to do, if you want to make a recommendation without discussing this, that's fine. If you'd like to discuss it and see if there's any items that you wish to salvage or maintain, that's fine. This is going to be my last meeting as chair, so I'm not going to sit here and direct this. I have my own ideas. And I was fairly uncomfortable, and I hope you discuss this with the chief. I was fairly uncomfortable in the part where our fire officials said that 9 had already been voted on and accepted for us. I thought I did the best I could to try to talk through that. I found that they were intransigent. I found that they had a single purpose. I found that they weren't here to give explanations. They were here to press home a single point. And I'm very concerned with that. The other point I'm concerned about, and I've sent you those, the numbers of those trees on Cuyama that are a couple of feet outside the city limits, which they acknowledged was their responsibility. And so we were assured that they were going to go ahead and take care of that. And I don't see that happening. There's a number of areas where I don't see that happening. And it almost might be kinder, and this is certainly not the venue for that, but I'm really kind of surprised when you go down Cuyama Avenue and Del Norte that we don't have signs that say, this is the city limit, because people never know when they're in and when they're out, right? They don't know who to call. We got people looking for all kinds of people, and they don't know where they're supposed to go. It would be kind if we just had like even a little monument, because when the people come in and they complain that we've got STRs or we've got ever, it's like, great, the county's down there, and we'd love to help you, but you know, you're not here. So what I would like to have is Mr. Wyrick interject at this time.
I had a card in there, and I wanted to interject now because I want to provide additional testimony.
Would you pull the speaker?
I want to provide additional testimony on the issue of ordinance 29 and 30, of which Chapter 9 is one chapter of, I believe, 29? 30, okay. And the reason I want to bring this up is because staff is, basically Renee has provided a testimony about the fire marshal's opinion. And I want to point out an exchange that I had with the city attorney with respect to the adoption of 29 and 30, where the fire marshal stated, for the record, quote, ordinances 29 and 30 have already been adopted for your city. And he mentioned that twice. That's an exact quote. And I asked the city attorney the following question. Are ordinances 29 and 30 considered to be taking effect inside the city limits without council ratification by resolution? And his answer was, to be quick and dirty about it, this is not possible and would be illegal. Health and Safety Code 13869.7 allows the County Fire Protection District to adopt building standards relating to fire and panic safety that are more stringent, but it also provides that those standards are adopted above state minimums do not apply until ratified by the city where they, inside the jurisdiction. Now, that's what the city attorney says, and that's not what the fire marshal says in direct testimony before this body. And I want to remind everyone that this is sort of strike three for things that the fire marshal has said to us that are not accurate by further discovery. Number one, remember back when we originally were looking at the fire sprinkler issue, they said we could not selectively adopt or reject their additions. That was proven to be incorrect. They second said that we were unable to have in-house fire safety reviews at all. The truth is we can some. We can get into the detail of that. But my point is that when we hear the fire marshal say, well, these are what apply to your city, but we consider all the rest of this adopted, I get very nervous as a council person with respect to looking out for the sovereignty of our citizens and our ability to look out for the interests of our citizens. When I look at 29 and 30 and see issues that are relevant to our citizens beyond what was in Chapter 9. So I consider this a real problem, that we have testimony by the fire marshal, which our city attorney says is incorrect. And I'm concerned about what we do as a city. If the fire marshal is asserting that these things have been adopted for us and enforcing them without our knowing exactly what is and is not part of 29 and 30 outside of Chapter 9 beyond state mandates, and how we protect our citizens from another agency putting burdens on our citizens without council consent. So I just wanted to be very clear that back in November, I took the timestamps of the fire marshal's testimony, provided them to the city attorney. He looked at it, and this was his response in reply to my questions. And so I, felt like that needed to be entered into the record, because while indeed Chapter 9 has some points that are over and above state mandates, there are things in 29 and 30 we do not know whether or not they over and above state mandates. But it is, according to our city attorney, absolutely inappropriate for the fire marshal to have said those were adopted, quote unquote, for us by the county. Thank you.
Council Wyrick, would you please stay at the podium for a moment? Do we have any board members that have any questions, or do we have any board members that would like some further clarification on this statement? Because now is the time to ask council.
Yeah, I have a question. How does the city, or in what fashion, if any, does the city of Ojai pay for or contribute to the county fire services?
It's a formula. We don't contribute directly. I believe it's by it's not like the police, sheriff, where we appropriate dollars directly. I believe it's It's an assessment on the taxpayers, and the taxpayers are paid.
On the property tax?
Yeah, we do not do a direct appropriation.
So
to the
really,
fund.
there isn't anything besides the county, there isn't a mechanism besides the county's direct mechanism?
No, we don't have a funding issue. All we can do is address the issue of how fire safety code over and above state mandate is enforced within the city limits.
Okay, do we have any sense, do you have any understanding? Because obviously, I've looked on our city budget and our city documents, and I have zero information contained within those data files of how much the county collects from the, within
Within the city limits?
within the city limits. Do we have any, is there any,
It's a few million, I know that.
It's
Two-
about a
2.8 million?
quarter, it's about a quarter of the 12-plus million dollars that are collected
Yeah, so it's,
through taxation?
through taxation of the
so like that
$12
2 to 3
billion
million would be,
dollar.
I'm sorry, I don't have the exact number.
Well, I'm just, from a practical perspective, I'm asking this question because I've posed several questions to the Ventura County Fire Department regarding, through the Public Records Act's request for revenues or fees received, et cetera, for several of their services that relate to either inspection, enforcement, and I have been able, and they've indicated to me that they have lump sum figures for the entire county.
But they don't break it
But
out?
they cannot break it down by city or jurisdiction beyond that. And as a consequence, not only is that opaque to anyone who simply wants to know where one's tax dollars go and in what sums, and then henceforth how they're utilized. Perhaps I'm not asking the right question, but I've asked the same question 3 times over the last 2 years.
Board Member Ulrich, I have that document
Do you?
in my
Broken
office,
down, yeah.
and you can look at
And
the
again,
board
I
number.
can't respond to that, although I do know that a lot of the fire marshal services are funded by fees.
Okay. Well, very good.
I'll make
avail
that
myself-
available so you
Thank
can,
Thank
it'll
you.
give you the proper number, the order number for the form. That's why I keep them. Doesn't matter how old they are, you get that form number and you can get to where you are.
Very good. All right,
Do-
thank
Do we
you.
have any other questions of
But
council?
I appreciate, I just wanted to say that for the record, because I am not personally comfortable as a council person, individual council person, with the fire marshal, based on his track record before us, in terms of self-defining what's relevant, not relevant to the city limits in 29 and 30.
Do we, Mr. Quillisi from the Planning Commission, do you have anything that you would like to add to this particular agenda item or thoughts? Just anything that you think can give us information so we can make the best recommendation to council possible?
Thank you, Chair Daddy. I have not sufficiently analyzed 29 and 30 to be able to give you anything definitive there. It does occur to me, though, that whether we are doing local plan checks and that kind of thing from a fire perspective is not going to change the amount of tax money that the people in Ojai pay for the county fire department.
Right.
We're still lost there. We should be able to make some changes if the split of work that's fire-related changes and we do more of it locally. I don't know the process for doing that, but I think we should be looking into it. We also, I think, need an assessment from staff on where 29 and 30 exceed both the state minimums and the current municipal code. And those are the things that we need to address in terms of whether or not we're going to accept 29 and 30 in whole or in part.
Okay. Who would like to weigh in on 2? Renee, do you have anything that you'd like to weigh in on 2, now that we've kind of opened up this discussion?
So in my discussion in the meeting that I had with the fire chief, to come up with
Was that
this-
Chief Lorenzen?
No, Masood Aragi.
Okay, he's the fire marshal.
Oh, sorry, fire
That's
marshal.
all right, yeah, no, Lorenzen is the chief.
And Ryan Karai, who works on the code adoption for Ventura County Fire. In going through the list, my understanding, and I have not read 29 and 30, so I do not know, that these changes that I have listed here were the building standard changes to Chapter 9, and that was the only building standard changes that they were proposing adoption. There might have been procedural changes, there might have been other things, but this list was the building standard changes.
Okay, and all of those, even if we know nothing about building or fire or anything, if we just know semantics, all laws are automatically forced upon every municipality by the state. Therefore, when we use the word adoption, adoption means above state law, because it's not necessary for an adoption, because again, the state makes it, we're a general law city, it's ours, we're done. There's no appeal to that. We can do a few more things above. So 9 is a total adoption, so 100% of that is above state law. Okay. Judy, do you have anything like that you'd like to add?
Not at this time.
Tom? No. Dale?
Not at this time.
Bill?
No, I concur in your analysis that we're looking at this because it exceeds state fire code. I like to think that the state fire marshal does a pretty good job, considering that they're responsible for several tens of millions of safety of several tens of millions of people. And at this point, I have not heard or seen anything that is persuasive for us as the Building Appeals Board to recommend to the City Council adoption of Chapter 9. And I do see it being a high degree of likelihood of it being burdensome to the few individuals who seek building permits in the city of Ojai.
Would Dale?
It seems to me there've been several times that we have said on many issues that we did not want to go above state law unless there was something very specific to our city that we needed to consider. And we've said that so many times that, and I'm not sure if there's not something here we need to consider. I've looked at it, but I would like to stay with what the state law says unless somebody has an idea that we should go above that.
Would you like to make a motion or a resolution? Would you like to craft one? Would you like one of us to craft one?
I would love one of you to craft one.
Okay, well, I'm going to make an attempt to craft one, although I've always said I would never do this, but this is it. I'm going to be sitting somewhere else. I am going to make a recommendation that we advise council that no codes above state law be adopted for this community, and that all inspections up to the limit of our ability and authority for plans, for plan checks, permits, and fees be done in-house within the city confines. Does anybody have anything?
motion, or?
That's a motion.
I'll second it.
Well, does anybody have anything that they'd like to discuss about that motion before you second it? Or you seconded it, and now, does anybody have anything they'd like to discuss or add or change or modify that motion? Roll call, Dale?
Okay, Member Ulrich,
Yes.
Member Murphy,
Yes.
Member Farmer,
Yes.
Chair Daddy,
Yes.
and myself, yes.
Okay, number 3. I'm going to preempt number 3 with the approval of the board, Renee, and we're going to go to number 6. And I'd like your input. I'm looking at that, and what I'm reticent to do is weigh through 3 and then get some additional information, and then go back and have to kind of redo what we did. So I'd really like to know what item 6 is first. If there's additional information that will help us with item 3, then we can get it done in a single motion, in a single discussion.
To be honest with you, I'll put number 6 on the agenda because it was on previous agendas and I thought it needed to be there. I don't specifically have
We're terrific, thank you very
information
much.
for you.
With that, we're going to go to item 3, and I'm going to make a very long dissertation. And then when I get done with the dissertation, then we have a couple of speaker cards. So here's what the dissertation is. And here's what my fear is. My fear is that we have, for more than a few decades I've been here, we come up with ideas and plans, they get floated, we get them kicked between planning, we didn't have building, we get them kicked between staff and council, and we come up with something. And the people within the community are totally clueless as to what the rules are. When they come in and they question what the rules are, we're totally clueless as to what the rules are. And things just don't get out of here. So what I want to do is I want to make it abundantly clear. And Renee, I really need you to weigh in. I want you to throw that's not correct flag. Okay? I mean, just seriously, I really need your help. We have 3 concurrent programs going for what we want to call second units. We have a regular second unit that people can come in and apply, and they're not asking for any waivers. They're not asking for concessions. They're not asking to conform. They can just come in. That's what they're right. We have a non-conforming or non-compliant, or whatever we want to call this thing, that's been going on for a number of years now. It's struggling, it's getting some traction, it's going on for a number of years now. We have Senate Bill 1069 that has come in, that has really changed a lot of thinking in little puzzle parts. And so I was so concerned about this 1069 that last week I informed a number of people, all the city council, a number of other people, and I went to the Ventura meeting, and I found it incredibly enlightening to see somebody else do a practice lobotomy before we have to. So I got to see the 45 people that were there questioning how this works and putting the questions together with the program and what we're doing. So it appears that we have second unit, we have second unit conforming, and then we have a new one, which is an accessory dwelling unit at ADU. And the ADU, it's kind of looking like a giant mule, a zebra, and a horse in a silhouette. They're not that much different. They each have a couple of different components. And what I'm hoping can happen is there can be a little checklist, and you see them where they say, you can do this with this program, and they have them all off to the side. And then they have the different components at the top, and then they have the little check marks. So you can just say, oh, if I do this, I do this. So what my biggest understanding is that if you ask for an ADU, that has a required owner-occupant on-premise requirement, period. That's simplification of that program. If you have a garage and you want to convert it, it does not have setback requirements. And rather than get into this very, very, very long component discussion, and we can do that if you want to, we'll take care of the 50 components that we have in these 3 programs, and we'll vet them out. But we have a program that is sunsetting. I don't like this. It's a horrible word. Amnesty connotates that you are guilty and then have been given a pardon. I don't like this amnesty program. There is no amnesty program. We had people build second units before 1947. In 1947, permits were first required. There's no amnesty. They didn't do anything wrong. So what I would like to do is put a program together and see if we can't have a discussion, but make a recommendation immediately to council to extend or eliminate the deadline on this, as we call it, amnesty program for the non-conforming. Just take that off. And the reason I'd like to take that off is because as we sleep, the state of California is busy working day and night. And what they're doing day and night is they have another bill called SB 35. And SB 35 is going to eliminate probably the city's ability to have planning and zoning based on RENA numbers. If the RENA numbers aren't there, it appears that the cities are going to be sanctioned and a lot of these inhibitions removed and a lot of rules removed. And that's SB 35. SB 30 is also another zoning and planning which removes the city's ability to limit doing whatever you're going to do. So we have 3 different programs and 3 different bills that are going through the motions now. And I think it would be premature for us to close the conforming program now when these haven't been finalized. The non-conforming program now, while these haven't been finalized. That said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the field here so we can get some input, and then that will help us with our discussion. So, Mr. Wyrick.
And again, I wanted to provide testimony on this issue because whereas SB 35 is contemplating a possible future law, we have an existing Senate Bill 1069 that is law right now. In effect on, and exactly, and in effect on, became effective on January 1st, 17. Now, the staff and council was informed by this by confidential memo in October of 16. In November, I had an exchange with the city attorney on this matter, where I referenced, I asked the following question. Since the, and again, I'll just quote one part of 1069. Accessory dwelling units shall not be considered new residential uses for the purposes of calculating local agency connection fees or capacity charges for utilities, including water and sewer service. That's from the law. I asked the following question, and I'll go ahead and hand these out to you in just a minute, because it is a public record. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I believe. It certainly seems to me that the non-conforming second unit program does not need to continue will serve letters from either the OVSD or GSWC after January 1st, 17. Certainly within the range of our council policy discretion if there's no new meters involved or no new street connections, that it's just a permit inspection issue in terms of our non-conforming program. I asked, and again in November, it seems to me we should extend the program with some significant publicity about how much less expensive it is, because it looks like the law says we don't have to ask for the capacity fees from the sewer district in order to grant a permit. And that's a significant impediment removed from our non-conforming program. Remember, it is our general plan housing element goal to do as many non-conforming permits as possible to address which chips away at our RENA numbers. That is a general plan goal. And it seems to me that what I was asking here of the city attorney was whether or not that's within the range of council discretion in service to our general plan goal, removing an unnecessary impediment. The answer I got quoted a number of rules basically saying, number one, the city attorney saying that I was correct on the law here, that the city actually cannot force or may not force, in other words, can choose not to, may not force an applicant to pay local agency connection or capacity charges, quotes a number of government code sections about this issue of a local agency shall not require the applicant to install a new or separate utility connection directly between the accessory dwelling unit and the utility or impose a related connection fee or capacity charge. Again and again and again, there's no doubt as to the intent of this law. I don't think so anyway. Now, the sanitary district has chosen to try to find a technicality, and Mr. Palmer has provided testimony to that effect, the general manager of the sanitary district, that they think that they have a way out of this because they're not a city, they're not a, et cetera, they are a separate district. I'm not sure that that would survive a court challenge personally, given the clear intent of this law. But nevertheless, that is a little beside the point in that our city attorney is telling us that we are perfectly within our rights as a council policy. As of January 1st, 17, we have, certainly within this law, have within our rights to not, as a condition of our permitting a non-conforming unit, or for that matter, a new unit that doesn't involve a new street connection or a new meter, to ask for a will serve. That makes the issue of the capacity charge that this law says should not be addressed to a ADU between the property owner and the sanitary district, in my opinion. In other words, we could simply say this is not going to be part of our permitting, but we're going to give you a disclaimer, we're going to give you a warning that the sanitary district may still consider this collectible, but we don't think it is, but we can't tell them what to do. But we certainly can't, we certainly are not, I don't think we should be in a position of violating the intent of the law of collaborating with the sanitary district and Golden State Water, for example, in terms of the clear intent. And so what I can think we should do, personally, individual city council member opinion, based on the clear intent and clear wording of this law, and what I have received in terms of, this was back in November, by the way, from the city attorney, is that we should consider extending the program and do it with, if we're not talking about new meters or new connections to the street, do it without will serve requirements on the non-conforming program at a minimum. I think that would serve that's consistent with our general plan, and I consider continuing to ask for will serves inconsistent with our general plan in terms of our non-conforming permit program. So that's my testimony and that's my perspective.
Council Wyrick, thank you. Commissioner Quillisi, you have a speaker's card.
Thank you, Chair, and Building Appeals Board members and staff. I agree with what Councilmember Wyrick, or Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick, excuse me, has just said to you. In addition, it is not clear to me what advantage there is to having an end to the second unit, or I don't know. Is the second unit compliance program now the ADU compliance program? Because AB 35 says in its first paragraph, this changes second unit to ADU everywhere within the law. So I'm not sure if we have two programs now or if we have three programs now, but in terms of dealing with non-compliant units that are not primary units on the property, let's put it that way for the moment, it's not clear to me what having an expiration of that program does as an advantage either to the city or to the citizens. You still, as the city, if you're looking for compliance, you still have to go find those units. And when you find them, I think there are ramifications of having a non-registered or non-permitted or whatever non-compliant unit. But when that condition is discovered, it seems to me, is irrelevant in terms of the existence of the program. I think that you should recommend to the city council to remove any limitations, time-wise, on the non-compliant unit program. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, Renee or City Manager Steve McClary, do you have anything you'd like to weigh in at this time?
Well, first, I just want to apologize. I got double booked this morning, so I'm sorry I was not able to be here at the beginning of the meeting. The Mayor Pro Tem is correct in terms of the policy with the will serve letters. That is a policy consideration that the City Council can certainly take up and provide some change back to staff on that. Also correct in pointing out that the city is not imposing any connection fees on those. The issue is what the sanitary district or other agencies are imposing, although we understand that the real issue is the fee that the sanitary district is imposing. So that is a policy consideration that the City Council could consider, and we understand, per the city attorney, that is a position the city could take. Where that would leave the individual property owners in terms of what they, obviously, if we did not require the will serve, we would need to know that that each one had an existing or was able to get to an existing connection. So that would simply be a health and safety issue at that point for us. Where that would leave the particular property owner in terms of the fee and the district would not necessarily be an issue that the city would directly be involved in, although I think we all recognize it would still be an issue. Those are my only comments at this point. Do you have anything that you'd like to add, Renee?
No, Pro Tem Councilman Wyrick, Mayor Pro Tem Councilman Wyrick did mention the possibility of having them sign a release form. If we're directed to do that, we would do that. However, the council directs us for the policy for the will serve letters.
One of the questions I have, having built a home and gone through this mosh pit before, was pretty interesting, is I had to get a will serve letter when I already had the sewer installed and done on an improved lot. And I always kind of shook my head and thought, well, that's the second stupidest thing the city ever did, was give away the sanitary department. They gave away the water department, they gave away the sanitary department. Why we wanted to give away all these departments is amazing. My question is, what purpose does it serve the city? What protections, what laws, what compliance issues does the city have to perform in demanding will serve letters before a permit is issued, before you answer, on improved property? So if it's improved property, they get the trash pickup, they have the water, they have the sewer, they have the electric. We're not talking about a first unit. I understand if it's a first unit, vacant land, first development. I understand the necessity for that. And that's just to provide where we're getting shafted beyond all reason. When we go all the way up Foothill and somebody builds the last house up Foothill and there's no water, Golden State goes ahead and puts that meter in at no cost. And they just add a couple $1 million to everybody else's unit. And so if we're going to look at will serve letters, we need to understand how they work. And so the last 11 units up there, they want to put a few $1 million pump in a great big tank, when those fees should have been paid for by those last 11 people that built on those vacant lots. So I'm not understanding where the protection for anybody is when everybody picks up the cost for private property and we already have service. If we didn't do that, what detriment would it be to the city? Any?
Well, I think what you're illustrating is you're coming back around to your point of, the city doesn't control the water purveyor. We don't control the sanitary district. And you're right, if all those things were within the city's control, it might be a one-size-fits-all type approach. I understand your point in terms of the folks who are coming on right now are having to pay very high fees. That's a, as we know, a function of the sewer district, and we all know that Golden State Water is governed by the rules of the California Public Utilities Commission. We know how hard they fight on behalf of the consumers. So,
And the school
We
is not
understand.
collecting fees, correct? The school is no longer collecting fees at this time?
the school fees have not been, aren't,
My understanding is for the
Verify.
second unit compliance program, they are not collecting school
Correct.
fees on those
And,
units.
and what
Thank you.
I understand is that the authorization for school fees had to do with a overcrowding mitigation fee that hasn't existed here since 1997. And so we collected school fees for a lot of years where it's kind of questionable, and that was a result of us sending over for the will serve letters. If this board were to recommend to council that we, as a courtesy, gave a disclosure that people were responsible for dealing with utilities and the trash company and the school, and it was not a requirement for a permit, I doubt if any of the authorities have the ability to come in and stop a duly permitted project. They may have the ability to come in and collect the fees, or double the price of the trash, or make you get a bigger container or something.
I think you're correct, right.
But I would like the city to be out of those items that are invasive. I don't really see where it helps the people. I don't really see where it helps the individuals. So I just, I wanted clarification on that.
Oh,
It-
one
Yes.
thought on that.
Yeah.
Is that in the Chapter 1 of the Building Code, it does talk about the fact that, permits can't waive any other state law, local jurisdiction law, or anything else. So I believe that if we were to come up with an amendment where we would not be asking for school fees or will serve letters or whatever, we need to adopt that as a code amendment in Chapter 1. Being that it is Chapter 1, we do not have to justify it geologic, climactic, or topographic. We have complete authority to alter Chapter 1 of the Building Code. And so we would make that a local amendment, and we would send it to the state.
Okay, if we didn't make an amendment and we just, and we, what it says is that we can't enforce.
It says that we can't issue a permit that would waive any other state law, district law, or requirement.
No,
So
I understand that, but see, giving a, then, and this is where I was trying to get clarity, thank you. By us issuing a permit, it just means that we're not making them go over to these other agencies and getting a note. We're not waiving their authority, we're just not being the tax collector for them anymore. We're not being a collection agency. So explain to me why just not enforcing it.
So I
Necessary.
believe, and I didn't write the code, but my thoughts are that the intent of the code would be that we would not allow a building to be built, let's just say, where the water department would not serve it with water, and therefore they could not occupy that building because
I-
it didn't have water. I
Right.
think that's where it was going.
Right, but I'm talking about improved property only. So I think maybe we're just splitting hairs, because, once you get water, we haven't required, except for sprinklers, to have an additional meter.
Correct, but I do believe that if the water company required a will serve letter if you did an addition to the house, and I don't know that this is true, I'm just using this as an example, and we issued a permit to add on to the house, and the water company says, well, you didn't get a will serve letter with us, we're shutting off your water. That's, I believe, what the code is trying to avoid. And like I said, we can make a local amendment to that section of the code. It's absolutely permissible.
Our water company, Golden State, threatened to shut somebody's water off because they didn't get a will serve letter?
No, I said that was a complete example. I don't know
Okay.
that that's true, but that's what the code is trying to prevent, that by
Right.
issuance of a building permit, we know for sure that upon completion of to house, we can issue a certificate of occupancy because they will be served with water, sewer, gas, all the utilities that are required for a habitable structure. So if we wish to make a local amendment, we can, where we would not be required to get will serve letters prior to certain types of construction. We have the authority to do that.
Okay, great. And what we'll do is we'll take that under advisement. Thank you. And continue to chime in.
Could I provide?
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick.
I have a question for Renee, and I appreciate the letting things go a little free form here. I appreciate that. Renee, when there's a conflict between a state statute and a local other agency jurisdiction ordinance, wouldn't the state statute be superior?
The only sections I have in the code about conflicts, it always says the most restrictive applies.
Okay. And so it's a matter of interpreting what's most restrictive.
Correct.
So my argument there is that the state statute says shall not, doing something that the other agency is saying we're going to do. And our city attorney says that this law apparently applies to them. They're saying it doesn't. What's more restrictive is a matter of interpretation. But clearly there seems to be a conflict between the state law and a local ordinance by another agency.
Correct.
And so I just wanted to point out that there is a conflict there, and I think it might be interesting. I think your point is well taken, perhaps to clarify by text amendment a hierarchy of jurisdiction there. Yeah.
And I would hope that staff would make sure that's in part of our recommendation if we are not complete enough in that recommendation that gets to council for them to review. As Mr. Quillisi said, Senate Bill 35 has not been passed. And so Senate Bill 35 is in reading right now. And with that thing moving along, which then says all second units are now ADUs, we're waiting. AB 35. And so that kind of really supports what I'm trying to say is we need not to sunset this second unit program because there are just too many changes coming down the road. And we could sunset this thing in a couple of weeks in March, and we could find out this bill gets passed the 15th of March and it's on again, and people shouldn't have to go through the torture of on again, off again.
Sure.
And there may be some clarity on the utility fees. There may be some other clarities that come in that time. So
Sure, Daddy.
I would like
May I ask something?
to open this up
Yes.
to speak. Go ahead, Dan.
My question is, if we are going to extend it, do we have to put an extension date on it, or we just open extended?
I'll take your recommendation. I'll take your recommendation. If you would like them to set aside, just blanket set aside the sunset date
Yes, yes.
to an indefinite period?
Yes, I would like
I
to make
believe
that
we
motion.
can. Okay.
I'd like to make the motion that we set aside that March 8th sunset date to some date,
Terminate
indeterminate day.
in the
That's-
future.
That's my motion.
Do I have a second?
Chair, I'm going to recuse myself from further discussion.
Okay.
Matter?
You can go ahead and have a seat in the audience. Do I have a second?
Yes.
From Judy Murphy? Would
Second,
you call?
Judy, okay.
Do we have discussion on this? Everybody pretty clear? Do we have any more questions? Judy, you looked like you were about ready to say what about?
No, she doesn't look like she's going to do that.
Tom, do you have any questions or anything you'd like to say on the sunsetting? City Manager McClary?
Is the board contemplating a subsequent motion perhaps with the further recommendations to ask the city council to consider amendments to the code, the whole issue with the will serve letter and all that? Is that, or is, because you asked that.
I think the agenda item is pretty simple. I think what I'm going to request the board to do, and Dale has done it, is to take care of the sunsetting March
Okay.
8th first. if we have a subsequent one, let's do them in small bites.
Got it.
I-
Okay.
I sit here and I watch city council, and they get done, and at the end of it, they got a 14-minute dissertation on what the motion actually is, and some
I
of the people
understand.
go, why are we doing that? I didn't want to vote that way. I thought that meant,
That
So
is-
I want to make it tiny bites.
My
Thank
motion
you.
is just that we extend this to some future
So
date.
what the motion is.
Thank you for the clarity.
Is that this thing be the sunsetting of the conforming unit be extended to an indeterminate date in the future to allow the rest of the legal clarification for these three different laws to be codified. Okay, do we have a vote? You going to roll call on that?
Yes, roll call. Member Murphy?
Yes.
Member Farmer?
Yes, yes.
Myself, so we have
Okay.
4.
Okay, now I'm going to entertain what Mr. McClary said. And what I'm going to entertain is that the city, I'm going to make a recommendation that the city take a look at the Chapter 1, refer it to legal, as they always do, and find the best way for us to get out of the will-serve business. And make sure that we have an adequate, easy-to-read disclaimer to all applicants that says they are responsible for dealing with utilities. And we could be nice, and we could name the utilities within the sphere of influence. We'd need a couple of different ones because we're served by 3 water purveyors. And it would be nice to have a map that shows that if you're in Taramina, it is Casitas. If it is, if you're by Vaughn's Market over there, it is Ventura River Water. So we have different water purveyors, and they have different rates for meters, and they have different rules. So it would be nice to allow, to have a brochure or notification that gives the phone numbers and the address. And what we do is we do a small map on the back that just kind of shades it in and say, if you're in this area, this is who you use. Because bouncing around is another thing, is how do you find them? I mean, we're served, thank God, by one trash company. But other than that, so that would be my recommendation. I'll put it in a motion if you like. The motion would be for the city to revisit Chapter 1 and rewrite by text amendment an ordinance to no longer be involved in will-serve letters.
This is after.
This is now. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Could I
that.
ask a question?
Yes.
Is that all will-serve letters for all construction or only for ADUs?
I don't see the difference.
Okay, can you were making an argument earlier, which I followed, in terms of already developed properties. Are you considering a distinction there?
Oh, no, this only applies to developed property where they're
Okay.
actually connected, they're actually paying, they actually have active.
That's what we thought. We just wanted, that was
If-
the building official's question, if the
We-
intention of the board was a recommendation that,
So I'll even make it a little bit better.
thank you.
We have locations where they disconnect for fire, for tree damage, for a number of items. They just pull the utilities. We've had a number of areas that have had different utilities removed from lots. And so if this is going to be a first-time utility or a reconnect to any utility, I would suspect that you would want to get the will-serve letters. Because we've had homes that have been damaged where those things have been pulled for a year. Go ahead.
Understand, right.
Just fire off. Let me know what the issue is.
Just getting our clear language. So first connection or reconnection would require the will-serve letter.
Oh, absolutely.
Got it, okay.
And a reconnection for any reason, abandonment, casualty loss, red tagging. I mean, there's a number of those things where,
Got it.
no, that gets to be health and safety. We really need to go back and require all that and look at it, get it re-inspected.
I think that's clear for staff.
Well, in a minute. Mr. Quillisi?
Thank you, sir. If you had a part of your motion there to say that the philosophy that is the idea behind your motion applies to ADUs, I think that would solve the problem, wouldn't it? Then we're not talking about primary residences, we're not talking about new construction of primary residences, but we're talking about all other dwelling units.
Actually, I could say it would be all other than 1941. Yes, I would say that to all other than the primary units. Because, and again, that becomes irrelevant because the primary units are already built. Some are permitted, some are not permitted. I wouldn't want a pre-1947 building that comes in for an addition, and then we discover we do not have a permit on it because permits were not required. To have those people go back through the will serve and all this stuff, even though they'd never been required a permit. I have hundreds of pre-permitted buildings, and it just doesn't make sense. Boyd Ford's, for example, 1927 Pierpont, that was never, we don't have a permit on that.
And just for clarity, that would not be an ADU, obviously.
Right, but he
Right.
had an ADU, and he put an ADU in the back,
Okay.
and those fees ended up costing $35,000 for all the permits and the sewer and all that other stuff.
I'm sure.
Put it in another meter, so, okay, so I'm not really sure where I am with this, but if you would,
I believe you were crafting a motion. I don't believe we had a second.
well, I
yet.
don't know that I can, and I got a second, but I don't know if I can recraft that motion. It pretty much was we're no longer going to require will serve letters from
First connection or
an existing connection. You want to say that again, Renee?
So the words that I think make the most sense was to a property with a first connection or a reconnection.
We will only then require will serve.
Yes.
Okay. The motion is we will only require will serve to a first connection or a reconnection. Do I have a second on that? Thank you, Dale. You want to call roll? Or, excuse me, do we have any more discussion? Do we have any more input? Would you call roll?
Yes.
Microphone.
Member Murphy?
Yes.
Member Farmer? Yes. Chair Daddy?
Yes.
And myself, yes.
I'm going to make another recommendation. We're going to move on and we're going to vote for a new chair. The other recommendation is going to be pretty simple. We need to have a couple of, we can make them formal or informal meetings for the purpose of allowing people to understand the differences between these three concurrent second unit or auxiliary or additional unit programs. The one they had in Ventura was very successful. And I think that
That was a public meeting?
it was a public meeting. They had about 45 people. I sent out a number of notices. I didn't send it out to the BAB because I didn't want a bunch of people there. Now we're violating the law while we're trying to get smart. What I would like to do is I would like to, within the rules of the Ralph M. Brown Act, I would like to have an ad hoc committee with a couple of planning commissioners to sit here and kind of vet out the difference between the three. And Steve, you missed what I said at the start. An ADU gives you wide flexibility. An ADU exempts garages from setbacks. It allows all kinds of other concessions where you don't have to do certain things, Tom, but you're done, so this isn't going to bother you. It appears that we need to let the people know where the differences are, and the differences for all ADUs are, and depending on when 35 goes through, all ADUs have an owner-occupied requirement. Period. That's what 1069 says. And if 35 goes through, and that then consumes the non-conforming, then you're going to have two programs, which is the ADU and then the second unit program, which somebody comes in, they have the proper zoning, they have all the other proper things, they can do what they want, and then they can have two rentals, technically in R2. These things are going to be R1, always. And they're going to lose the non-conforming issue that we have now. So Tom has a permit and a property that is non-conforming. Were the ADU program available at the time, he would have no issue with the garage and the setback, and then there would be no non-conforming on that. Am I making sense?
Mhm.
Because I can give you the language here, and I went through that down in Ventura. The question is that wasn't answered in Ventura is, if you have a second unit conforming, can they reapply into an ADU? And I don't need an answer now. That's a question for us to put out and to study and get in, but it's also an issue that we need to get to the public, because there's a lot of the public, we know from Mr. Kirshner's days, many years ago, a decade ago, that we had well over 400. I think the number was put at between 450 and 500 non-conforming units. And it's time for us to bring those into conforming, and it's time to make sure that, you know, there aren't these title issues and this issues and the perm issues. And this initiative by the state to add more housing seems to be, we're going to really eliminate all the issues and all the roadblocks and the problems. I sat there, the biggest thing is that an ADU does not add to density. No. My heart says, okay, I'll go with it. My head said, gee whiz, really?
So-
It does, but they've eliminated that from consideration.
So what I'm hearing, I heard a couple key things out of that. One, I believe the area that, the code that you're talking about is the area that the planning commission is going to be looking at. I don't know that it falls under the section of the code that is under the Building Appeals Board. However, if it's something that the board would like to kick up to council as a recommendation, I'm certainly not going to get in the middle of that. We would let the council, of course, make that decision. And then in terms of if there was any type of integration or joint committees or anything between the appeals board and the planning commission, I feel that would also need to be, would need to go up to the city council and get the council's blessing.
And that's fine. I just remember what we went through with the second unit non-conforming.
Right.
So we had Title 10 over here, doing
Right.
Title 9.
Right.
And back and forth, and we did some things, and we eliminated some things, and there were some concerns. It's very clear that 1069 has eliminated 90% of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what the most important thing would be for the two parties to get together for concurrence and a total understanding of, hey, yeah, this is how this thing really works, and this is what we're going to do. And it's not up to the council to decide if we're going to do it. State's already said we're going to do it. It's just up to us to understand how it flows and make any recommendations, and then come up with something we can get to the public. Because I think there's a real opportunity in 2017 to do a couple of hundred of these units. I think a lot of the hesitation was the hassle and some big fees. The big fees may or may not be there, but I think that the problem with that occurred between the two bodies, which had to do with the setbacks, has been eliminated for garages now, either attached or detached. That's no longer an issue. And I've got all this yellow line, so if you need to know exactly where that sentence is, I can get it to you, so. Tom?
Yeah, Renee, if I can ask you, do you have any idea of how many applicants we have right now from the non-conforming second unit program? And where they're at, where they stand?
So the numbers I got today was that there were a total of 45 applications. 31 of them have been legalized and finalized through the compliance program. 5 were issued a permit pending, and they're pending final inspection. 1 is approved and just waiting for pickup by the applicant, and 8 are still in the review process.
And I have a comment on that, and
Thank
just,
you.
just a warning, because we spent a lot of time in Ventura on this. From the time somebody applies for a permit till the time they have to have it issued is 120 days. And that's fine. If you give them something to do, and they don't come back to 115 days, and they've stalled it all that time, and you only have 5 days to act, I know Ventura did not have an answer for that.
Well,
So-
I believe we have 120 days to act from a complete application,
Well,
and that's the trigger.
okay,
Because you're right, the agency does need to act within that time period.
right.
But we'd have to have the complete application, correct?
So anyhow, that would be a recommendation for council that we go ahead and get the two groups together in an ad hoc, if possible, and discuss this thing out and make sure we all know where we are and make sure everybody understands ADU parking is not a problem, half a mile within. I saw.
I would recommend that we probably come back and actually agendize that as a discussion item. I don't believe the agenda really spelled out that as an option
No,
for
and
the
that's fine.
board
We
to
can
consider
do
today.
that.
So,
We can
sorry.
do that.
Okay.
Yeah, in 3 weeks, but you know what, there's going to be a new chair here in a few minutes, and that new chair is the one that's going to be responsible for that determination. Okay, do we have anything else on this agenda that we haven't done? Okay, agenda item 4. Mr. Ulrich, would you please come back and take your seat? Okay, Secretary, for now. Agenda item 4, is requesting that the board make nomination for chairman of the appeals board. Do I have anybody that would make a nomination for a chair to take over for the next term?
I'll ask for nominations.
I'm sorry?
I'll ask for nominations to take over the chair. That's what it says here.
Okay,
Secretary
you want to do that?
Yes,
Go
I'm
ahead.
asking for a nomination. Are there any nominations for the new chair?
Yeah, I'd like to
Yes?
nominate
Okay,
Mr. Ulrich.
okay. Mr. Ulrich, is there any other nominations for the chair?
Judy had her hand up.
Oh, well, I think,
No, I'll withdraw that.
okay. Okay, it appears that no one else is making a nomination, so I will ask if we are now going to close the nominations for the chair, and I'll take a roll call on that. Member Ulrich?
I'll recuse myself.
I believe you should have a motion and a second.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a second for the new chair.
Uh,
And that was from Judy.
Secretary, or excuse me, Board Member Hanson, were you the maker of the motion then?
Yes, I was.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, so, I'll,
Is this a roll call?
just a roll call. Member Murphy?
Yes.
Member Farmer?
Yes.
Chair Daddy?
Yes.
Okay, and myself, I say yes. So we have a new chair. William Ulrich will be the new chair. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Do you want to physically get up, or do you want to just have
Why don't we do it that way?
the thing moved over? Okay, well, you know what, you need to,
We have vice chair.
we need to make a nomination for the vice chair, right, Dale?
Yes, we do, but I think that's done by the new chair, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. As the chair, I'd like to nominate for the position of vice chair, Tom Farmer.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Chair Ulrich? Yes, Chair Ulrich.
Yes.
Yes. Member Murphy?
Yes.
Do you wish to abstain or vote?
I'll recluse.
Okay. Chair
Yes.
Daddy And myself, yes. So we have 4 yes.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so from this point on, we are looking at item number, just a question here. Do we need to, after having taken those votes, do we need to go back to the city for any purpose here? Staff, either? Oh, excuse me?
Yeah, you-
Wait, no. I'd just like to go ask that question. There's no comments or additions or contributions?
Nothing at this point, Mr. Chair? No, thank you.
Okay, very good. In that case, item number 5, future agenda items. I would, before I open, let's go with, we have a recommendation to discuss future agenda items for the Building Appeals Board. So let's, and also to recommend a schedule for the next agenda code amendments to the 2016 California Building Code CBC. I'm going to, in the absence of any public comment, I'm going to open it up for discussion.
Would you set a date first?
A date for the next meeting, rather than the agenda items. In that case, then I would like to set a next meeting. I would call for the next meeting. Actually, I'd call for a combination of things. We need to set up another meeting sometime within the next 3 weeks, ostensibly. And once again, per earlier comments, sometime in evening when it will be accessible to all members. And I would also like to, since this matter has been discussed, and perhaps we can discuss it a little further, but have some sort of informational or pre-meetings among the board member, the Building Appeal Board members, along the lines of the meetings that are afforded, informational meetings that are afforded to the Planning Commission. So that would be obviously not involving any quorum. However, there's a lot of material coming to us that we need to consider and make recommendations on in the near term to the council, and that volume of information will require some study along with the building official and perhaps some other staff. So having said that, that is my recommendation. Do we want to have any discussion on that?
Just clarification, so are you asking for the ad hoc committee?
No.
No.
No, I'm saying we need to have a formal Building Appeals Board meeting within 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Or
So that would be
or
March
as close to
14th.
that time frame as possible. In other words, approximately the middle of March.
Yeah, that would be March 14th, would be 3 weeks. Doesn't have to
Exactly.
be that day, it's a Tuesday.
No, it does not. Whatever works relative to availability of these chambers or another suitable location. And in advance of that, as a precursor to that, I would like to discuss and that among this board and also in conjunction with city staff, the potentiality of having informational meetings and a non-quorum configuration sufficient that we can expedite our
We just-
processing.
Okay, can we just do the first one first?
Absolutely.
Okay, for the notes, it's difficult.
Yes, yes, distinguish.
Okay, so I think the
please.
14th is a city council meeting, if we're going to do evening meetings. And I think that the 15th might be a planning commission meeting.
I would recommend that we not try to set the specific date and time here. I'm not prepared for that. We
Okay.
need to make sure that we can get calendars and
Yeah.
everybody available and all that, and
Right.
that takes a little bit of coordination, so I would hesitate to try and set something that we, or set a promise that we cannot keep.
Okay,
But we understand the expectation that you'd like to be able to meet within the
Absolutely.
next 3 weeks.
okay.
We also understand the request for the pre-meetings, and I will give that some consideration in terms of the request of the staff.
Very good, okay. And then before we go any further, since there is, we have the Planning Commission liaison would like to make a comment, I would like to call for Mr. Quilisi to
Thank
step
you.
up.
As, in terms of the BAB meetings, I'd like to just throw out a suggestion and say that maybe you meet at 7 PM on the Tuesday following each city council meeting. That way there's no conflict, and you have openings for 2 meetings a month. That would mean the 7th and the 22nd, for example, of March. And then the only question is there time for the city to notice a March 7th meeting? I think probably the end of the day today is the deadline for noticing a March 7th meeting, but I'm not positive. I think it has to be at least 10 days before the meeting, and since the newspaper only publishes once a week, it is really the second Friday before that Tuesday.
It doesn't require a,
And the deadline for getting into that second Friday's issue is probably that Tuesday, so it's 2 weeks ahead.
I think we need to let Mr. McClary make those decisions, because sometimes there are city council meetings on an off Tuesday, and, that's my idea.
I'm not really sure that you actually have to notice it in the paper as long as it's
We do not.
pasted on the front door.
does not require a newspaper notice.
Right, so we can just paste it on the front door. Thank you.
Okay. So at this point then, do we have a resolution? I've made a recommendation. Do we have a resolution relative to our next meeting to be determined
City- by the
by staff, by the city manager?
Right, I think
We'll pull the members.
what I'm hearing that is, Steve, you'll get back to us. on
Yep,
that.
either myself or Renee. Staff will follow up,
Okay.
yes.
In that
Thank you.
case, then I think that's all we need to do relative to that issue. And is there any other comment or any other issues before us? In that case, then I'm going to call,
Congratulations.
why, thank you so much. I'm going to call this meeting adjourned.
Anybody know how to turn off the TV?
Yep, sure. I do. Oh, you can do that. Turn it on. So now Mr. Ulrich will have more, he quoted more often in the newspaper than you, Bob.
Excuse me?
I want to say one other thing, is that somebody else has to take the notes.
Boy, howdy.
Gail, go ahead, please.